Have you ever wondered why the question about penis size still follows men even after 50 or 60, long after we've built careers, families, and entire lives? And more importantly, have you ever stopped to ask yourself whether the ideal size you picture in your mind has anything to do with real science? I'm Dr. Emilly Collins, and if you've ever felt insecure, compared yourself, or questioned whether your penis is big enough, small enough, or somehow imperfect, this is exactly where you need to be. Because researchers have finally uncovered what most women actually appreciate, and the truth has far more to do with erection quality, sexual confidence, and blood flow than with exaggerated measurements. As men age, we experience something few talk about openly. Erections change, hormone levels shift, circulation weakens, and suddenly even a perfectly normal penis can feel less than. These changes create doubt. Doubt about performance, doubt about masculinity, doubt about whether our size still matters in sex the way we once believed it did. But here's the shocker. In multiple scientific studies, women consistently report valuing a penis that feels comfortable, balanced, and capable of maintaining a strong erection far more than one that is unusually large. That means firmness, function, and connection outrank size every single time. Yet the myth of the ideal size still damages countless men's confidence. It pushes them into comparison, fuels anxiety, and often distracts them from the real issue, which is circulation and performance, not centimeters. And when a man starts believing he's not enough, even when he is perfectly within the normal and appreciated range, that psychological weight can affect his erection, his desire, and his ability to enjoy intimacy. This is why understanding what researchers actually define as the most appreciated size becomes a turning point. Once you know the truth, you can stop fighting the wrong battle and start focusing on what truly enhances your sexual vitality. You've probably felt this at some point, right? That moment of wondering how you compare, or whether your partner secretly wants something different. Tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced that pressure, because understanding this content matters more than most men realize. And while you're here, make sure to like the video and check if you're already subscribed, because what you're about to discover next may genuinely surprise you as we move deeper into what women actually prefer and why science consistently debunks the old myths surrounding penis size. When researchers look beyond assumptions and actually ask women privately about their preferences, the answers reveal a pattern far more stable and consistent than the myths men grow up hearing. In study after study, women rank comfort, connection, and proportion as the qualities they appreciate most in a penis, not extreme size. And when they describe what pleasant, satisfying, or ideal means, it has far more to do with how the penis feels during sex than with how it looks on a ruler. This is where science becomes liberating, because it shatters decades of pressure men place on themselves without knowing that most women prefer something very close to the statistical average. In confidential surveys, women repeatedly indicate that an overly large penis can actually create discomfort, limit positions, and reduce the sense of closeness they crave during intimacy. Instead of enhancing sex, excess size can introduce tension, hesitation, and even pain, which disrupt the emotional and physical flow of the moment. What they describe as truly appealing is a penis that fits well with their body, allows natural rhythm, and maintains consistent firmness. And firmness, as researchers emphasize, is linked to blood flow, endothelial health, nitric oxide production, and lifestyle choices, not size at all. Another interesting finding is how women's preferences shift, depending on emotional factors rather than physical ones. When asked about what they appreciate in long-term partners, most women focus on trust, emotional safety, communication, and the ability to stay present. They report feeling more satisfied with a man who pays attention to their reactions, adjusts his pace, and stays confident in his own body. In those moments, size becomes almost irrelevant compared to the experience itself. That's why many scientists now argue that the obsession with size is largely a male-driven narrative, fueled by comparison, media distortion, and internal pressure rather than female expectation. Even in experimental studies where women evaluate 3D models without any social influence, their choices consistently hover around realistic, balanced proportions. They don't choose the extremes men imagine. They choose shapes that look comfortable, manageable, and capable of creating pleasurable, bonding intimacy. And when women explain why, the answer is surprisingly simple. They want sex to feel good, not overwhelming. They want connection, not performance. They want a partner who understands her body, not one who competes with imaginary standards. What this means for men over 50 or 60 is deeply empowering. As your focus shifts from worrying about size to improving erection quality, sensitivity, stamina, and confidence, your entire intimate life can transform. Because once you understand that appreciation is rooted in the experience you create, not the centimeters you measure, you start freeing yourself from silent insecurities and stepping into the kind of presence women consistently report as far more attractive and satisfying than any exaggerated number. And this clarity leads directly into the deeper reason so many men misunderstand what truly matters, which is how aging, circulation, and hormonal shifts begin to alter not the size itself, but how you perceive it and how it responds during intimacy. As men move into their 50s, 60s, and beyond, something subtle but powerful begins to happen, and it has nothing to do with the actual size of the penis. Instead, it's the way aging affects circulation, erection quality, hormonal balance, and even body perception. Many men start to believe their penis has become smaller, when in reality the measurement hasn't changed at all. What has changed is the firmness, the fullness, and the strength of the erection, which creates the illusion of size loss. Researchers call this the functional shrink, meaning the penis appears smaller not because it is, but because it isn't filling with blood the way it used to. Circulation is a central piece of this puzzle. The blood vessels that supply the penis are incredibly small and highly sensitive to aging. As nitric oxide production declines and the endothelial lining becomes less responsive, erections can appear softer, slower to rise, or less rigid. When that happens, the penis doesn't reach its full potential length or girth, causing men to misinterpret the change as a size problem instead of a blood flow issue. And once a man believes something is wrong with his size, that worry affects confidence, which then affects performance, creating a loop that reinforces the insecurity. Hormonal changes also play a significant role. Testosterone naturally decreases with age, and with lower testosterone comes lower libido, less spontaneous arousal, and slightly reduced erectile firmness. But again, this doesn't reduce the anatomical size of the penis. It only influences how it behaves during sex. When a man feels less responsive, less sensitive, or less firm, he often assumes his body is deteriorating in ways that are irreversible. Yet in most cases, the issue is completely biological and completely fixable with the right habits. Another important factor is body perception. When a man carries extra weight around the lower abdomen, subcutaneous fat can build up around the pubic area. This creates a buried appearance that makes the penis look shorter than it truly is. Researchers have found that even a small reduction in abdominal fat can make the penis appear noticeably larger simply because more of the base becomes visible again. It isn't a change in anatomy, it's a change in visibility and angle. Add to this the emotional side of aging. Many men feel pressure to perform the way they did in their 20s or 30s, and when their erections don't behave the same way, they internalize that change as failure. But what's actually happening is that the body is asking for different support. A penis that once responded instantly may need more time, more stimulation, or better circulation to achieve full rigidity. These changes are normal, expected, and deeply misunderstood. Understanding this shift is crucial, because once you stop blaming size and start recognizing how blood flow, hormones, and perception shape your experience, you regain control. You no longer see your penis as something that's shrinking, but as something that's responding to the natural physiology of aging. And when you see it through that lens, the myths about size lose their power, leading directly into one of the biggest traps older men fall into when comparing themselves to unrealistic standards. One of the greatest traps older men fall into is comparing themselves to unrealistic standards, a habit that quietly erodes confidence and distorts the way they see their own bodies. After decades of exposure to exaggerated images, jokes, locker room talk, and cultural pressure, many men develop an internal benchmark that has nothing to do with reality. They begin measuring themselves not against scientific averages or real-life experiences, but against extremes that were never meant to represent normal male anatomy. This comparison becomes even more damaging with age, because when erection quality naturally changes, men often assume their penis has fallen short, when in truth, the standard they're using was flawed from the start. Researchers have found that many men overestimate what women actually prefer, often imagining sizes far above the ranges women describe as comfortable or pleasurable. This gap between perception and reality creates a psychological burden. A man might look in the mirror and see insufficiency, even though his size is perfectly within the scientifically appreciated range. And the moment he believes he is lacking, that belief affects how he approaches intimacy. Performance becomes a test. Sex becomes something to prove rather than something to enjoy. This mindset triggers tension, self-monitoring, and hesitancy, all of which interfere with natural arousal and blood flow. This is where the comparison cycle becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more a man fixates on size, the more anxious he becomes. The more anxious he becomes, the harder it is to maintain a strong erection. And the weaker the erection feels, the more he convinces himself that his size is the problem. In reality, the root of the issue is the anxiety itself. The fear of not being enough quietly sabotages the very performance he cares about. It becomes a loop, where insecurity creates physical struggle, which then feeds deeper insecurity. Men also compare themselves to younger versions of their own bodies. They remember erections that were instantaneous, unshakable, and effortless, and they assume that any difference now means decline. But aging doesn't erase masculinity, it reshapes it. A slower arousal curve doesn't mean failure. Needing more stimulation doesn't mean something is wrong. These are normal physiological changes, but when a man believes there are signs of inadequacy, he tightens emotionally and physically, making arousal even harder. What researchers highlight is that confidence, presence, and responsiveness matter far more to women than the numerical size men obsess over. A man who is attentive, self-assured, and engaged is consistently rated as more satisfying than one who is technically larger but emotionally disconnected. When men focus on imaginary standards instead of real expectations, they rob themselves of the connection that women value most. And what's most striking is how many insecurities dissolve the moment a man understands that the psychological weight he carries was built on myths, not truth. This understanding sets the stage for a deeper exploration into how these myths shape a man's emotional world, influencing not only his confidence but the way he experiences intimacy itself. As men internalize unrealistic expectations over the years, the myth surrounding penis size becomes more than just a belief, it becomes a psychological lens through which they interpret their entire intimate identity. The mind starts shaping the body's experience long before the body even responds. Researchers have shown that when a man believes his size is inadequate, even slightly, that belief alone can alter his erection quality, desire, and sense of control during sex. It creates a quiet tension, a background pressure that follows him into every intimate moment, whether he acknowledges it or not. This psychological weight often begins early in life, long before sexual maturity. A careless comment, a moment of comparison in a locker room, or exposure to exaggerated media can plant a seed of self-doubt that grows over the decades. When men reach their 50s or 60s, those old insecurities can resurface more strongly, especially as natural changes in erection firmness begin to appear. A man might interpret normal aging as confirmation of fears he carried since youth. Instead of seeing a gradual shift in circulation or hormonal balance, he sees evidence that he was never enough, even when that belief has no scientific basis. This emotional layer becomes deeply intertwined with physical response. Anxiety triggers the sympathetic nervous system, elevating cortisol and narrowing blood vessels, two factors that directly weaken erections. It becomes a loop where psychological tension leads to physical difficulty, and physical difficulty reinforces psychological tension. In this cycle, size is no longer the issue at all. The real challenge is the narrative the man has built around his body. Women repeatedly report in studies that confidence, presence, and emotional security are far more important than size. Yet men often dismiss these findings because their internal insecurities feel more real than external facts. A woman may express satisfaction, but a man who doubts himself struggles to fully believe her. This internal disconnect can create unnecessary distance in relationships, not because of physical shortcomings, but because of silent emotional battles. What's even more striking is how quickly this pattern can shift once a man begins understanding the psychological roots of his insecurities. When he starts recognizing that his worth, desirability, and performance are not defined by size, his entire sexual experience can change. Blood flow improves when tension decreases. Responsiveness increases when anxiety fades. Intimacy becomes more about connection and less about performance metrics. The body reacts to the mind's permission to relax. This is why many experts argue that overcoming size myths is not simply about correcting facts, it's about reshaping identity. When a man learns to view his body through a realistic, compassionate, and scientifically grounded lens, he begins reclaiming confidence that may have been undermined for years. And this shift naturally brings us to a deeper question older men often face: if size isn't what determines satisfaction, then what daily habits actually influence performance, vitality, and the intimate experience in a meaningful and lasting way? When men finally understand that size is not the defining factor of satisfaction, something important becomes clear. What truly shapes a man's sexual experience after 50 or 60 are the daily habits that influence circulation, erection quality, sensitivity, stamina, and overall vitality. These habits are far more powerful than any number on a ruler because they determine how the penis functions, how the body responds, and how confident a man feels in intimate moments. And researchers consistently emphasize that the foundation of strong, reliable erections, at any age, is blood flow. Without healthy circulation, even a perfectly average or above-average penis won't perform the way a man expects it to. This is why lifestyle becomes such a critical part of the conversation. Small, subtle choices throughout the day accumulate into major results in the bedroom. A diet rich in whole foods, leafy greens, healthy fats, and antioxidants directly supports endothelial function, the very system responsible for producing nitric oxide and expanding blood vessels during arousal. Men who incorporate simple circulation-boosting foods, like citrus, beets, nuts, berries, and dark leafy vegetables, often notice improvements not only in their erections but in their energy levels and mental clarity. The penis depends on the same vascular health that supports the heart and brain. Movement is another essential factor. Sedentary routines restrict blood circulation, weaken pelvic muscles, and reduce hormonal responsiveness. A brisk daily walk, light strength training, or even basic stretching can dramatically improve blood flow to the pelvic region. Many men are surprised to learn that regular physical activity increases testosterone levels naturally, boosts libido, and strengthens the muscles that support erections. The body thrives on activity, and the penis responds quickly to improved cardiovascular performance. Sleep also plays a hidden but vital role. During deep sleep, the body restores testosterone and repairs vascular tissues. Men who consistently sleep less than 6 hours often experience weaker erections, reduced desire, and slower physical recovery. When sleep improves, the morning erections many men associate with youth often begin to return, signaling healthier circulation and hormone balance. Stress management cannot be overlooked either. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, a hormone that suppresses testosterone and tightens blood vessels, both of which diminish erection quality. Techniques like mindful breathing, light meditation, or simply reducing mental overload allow the parasympathetic nervous system to take over, the very system responsible for triggering and maintaining erections. When the mind relaxes, the body follows, and sexual response becomes smoother and more natural. Hydration, magnesium levels, pelvic floor strength, and even basic posture throughout the day influence how responsive the penis feels. A man who supports his body with consistent, intentional habits experiences intimacy not as something unpredictable or fragile, but as something rooted in steady physical vitality. These habits don't just improve performance, they rebuild confidence from the inside out. And once a man recognizes how much control he truly has through simple, science-backed routines, he begins to see his sexual health not as a fading ability but as a system he can support, strengthen, and enjoy. This understanding leads directly into a deeper exploration of what researchers ultimately define as the most appreciated penis, not by size, but by the qualities that truly shape a fulfilling intimate experience. When researchers summarize what women actually appreciate most in a man's sexual presence, the findings point to something far deeper and more meaningful than the old obsession with centimeters. What truly matters is how a man shows up in intimacy, how confidently he handles his body, how connected he stays to the moment, and how well his erection supports a natural, pleasurable rhythm for both partners. Women repeatedly describe the most satisfying experiences as those in which the penis feels firm, responsive, and aligned with the emotional energy of the encounter. In other words, the qualities that matter most have nothing to do with extremes and everything to do with balance, function, and connection. A penis that maintains steady erection quality, responds predictably to stimulation, and allows comfortable versatility during sex is consistently rated as more appealing than one that is unusually large or difficult to manage. Researchers emphasize that the ability to sustain firmness and adapt to the partner's body creates far more pleasure than a size that limits comfort or movement. Women value confidence, not tension, presence, not performance anxiety, and a man who listens to their body rather than trying to meet imaginary standards. These qualities communicate emotional security, which is one of the strongest predictors of sexual satisfaction for long-term partners. This is why so many men find liberation when they finally understand that appreciation is not measured by size. It is built through reliability, intimate awareness, steady circulation, and the willingness to stay connected instead of distracted by self-judgment. A man who feels secure in his body becomes more attentive, more expressive, and more confident, and that confidence transforms the entire experience. Women respond not to the length on a ruler but to the way a man makes them feel respected, understood, and desired. Even factors like skin sensitivity, consistency of arousal, and the ability to maintain pleasurable pressure during penetration often matter more than size itself. A penis that feels natural, warm, and fully alive creates far more erotic connection than one that focuses solely on visual impression. Researchers underline that emotional presence magnifies physical sensation, meaning that a man who invests in his vitality, erection strength, and mental clarity naturally becomes more satisfying without chasing unrealistic size expectations. When men embrace this understanding, they step into a version of their sexuality that feels grounded, capable, and authentic. They stop fighting ghosts and start building real intimacy. And if you have followed the journey through this entire video, you already know how important this knowledge is for reclaiming confidence and pleasure at any age. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment saying this message was for me so I know you reached the end. And if the content added value to your life, subscribe to the channel and give the video a like, because it helps me continue bringing clarity to topics most men struggle with silently. There is another video right here that continues this conversation in a way that will make everything even clearer, so click and keep moving forward with me there.